Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of CivOps Gear, reviewing all the EDC gear and knives for everyone from the discerning civilian all the way to the experienced operator. Today I want to take a look at Kershaw and Zero Tolerance then and now. In other words, two new knives just came in today from House of Blades. The Zero Tolerance Fixed Blade 0006 and the Kershaw Livewire. So as I was looking at both of these, it occurred to me that these companies, both being really the same company, ZT is to Kershaw as Lexus is to Toyota, Lincoln is to Ford, owned by the same parent company, have come a long way. Not necessarily in terms of design. They've always had great designs, but particularly in blade steel. And they have at one time, and maybe still are trend setters, but they also are keeping up with the trends. So let's take a quick look at these knives real quick, and we'll talk about some of the similarities and differences. There are some older Kershaw automatics. No out the front automatics as far as I'm aware of, and I've been collecting Kershaws for 10 or 12 years now. But there are some other out the side automatics. The Commander, this is the Rogue, and this was the very first Kershaw auto that I ever got. And looking back on the history of this knife, I come to find out that it was only $100 retail when it was actually available in stores, which blew my mind because as a collector, buying this pre-owned after they were long discontinued, boy, I spent a lot more than $100 on this knife. Anyway, this knife, when it came out, oh gosh, 15, almost maybe 20 years ago now. 15 years ago for sure, it'd have to be. This knife was about $100. And this is an R.J. Martin designed out the side automatic with a pretty beefy 4-inch blade. And this has aluminum scales with that sort of very old Kershaw style Track Tech insert on the sides for grip and traction. Has a nice pocket clip, not deep carry, but pocket clip that can go from right-handed tip up to right-handed tip down to left-handed tip up. There is no left-handed tip down option. Boy, I love this knife. The Kershaw Rogue is so cool. I've loved it for a long time. The action is, I mean, it is Pro-Tech level action on this knife. It is snappy. And by snappy, I mean you got to hold on tight because it's brutal. It is a fantastic knife. Now, this R.J. Martin designed Kershaw Rogue might have only been $100 because this used 14C28N steel. And that is a steel that as an older Kershaw collector, I got very used to that steel in a lot of Kershaws. 14C28N was a common steel for me to see in Kershaws. Looking back on the history of that, turns out, at least the story I've read and have heard and choose to believe, is that Kershaw is actually responsible for 1428 steel, 14C28N steel, because that steel is made by Sandvik, which is a Swedish steel company, and it was apparently said that Kershaw went to Sandvik and said that they wanted their 13C24N steel to be more corrosion resistant, and Sandvik came out with 14C28N, made it a little bit more corrosion resistant. So Kershaw used the absolute hell out of that steel. And it was extremely popular for a long time with them. And including in this, what was a high-end and what has become an extremely hard to find and collectible automatic Kershaw. Now in 2023, we have Kershaw's very first out the front automatic. Of course, made in the USA, as was the Rogue, made in the USA. The Livewire, Kershaw's very first out the front, with really a fairly beautiful action. There is a lot of throw on this button. There's a lot of travel, but the action is great, very snappy. It's got a nice satisfying sound to it. The playability factor with this knife is all day long. It's got a nice deep carry clip, not a very large clip, but deep carry. Doesn't look like, well, yeah, it actually does. Looks like you could probably transfer it to be a left-handed carry. But meanwhile, let's look at the steel. On this new Livewire, Kershaw is using 20 CV steel, which has become very popular in a lot of the recent zero tolerance knives. 20 CV is a very, very high-end steel, much higher end than 14C28. 20 CV is far more similar to like an M390. So it is definitely a premium steel. And the edge on this is very good right out of the box. Kershaw's never been one to lag on sharp edges right out of the box, at least in my experience. So while 14C28N is a great steel for edge retention and for everyday carry use and perhaps kitchen knives because of its corrosion resistance, it's not what you would call a hard duty use steel. It's your 20 CV is going to stand up much better to harder use and has a very, very hard Rockwell rating and is going to keep an edge very, very seriously. This is much more similar to like an M390. One similarity is both of these are cast out of aluminum. And in fact, I like that on the Livewire, instead of any of these old style Track Tech inserts, and if you know your Kershaw blur at all, you'll be very, very familiar with the Track Tech inserts. That's was very common on all of the old generations of blurs before they upgraded to a sort of a rubbery material. Instead of using that, they now in these more recent model years have gone to just kind of molding the jimping and texture and traction right into the aluminum. So there's a nice jimping up on top here. There's plenty of jimping, obviously, for traction on the activation switch. There's plenty of jimping for traction on the sides, and there's some nice jimping in a very subtle finger choil underneath. So from years gone by with 14C28N steel to an out the front with 20 CV steel, I don't know if I would say that Kershaw has started the trend of 20 CV. It certainly is very popular with zero tolerance for sure. But I believe that Kershaw really did sort of start the trend with the 1428 because I think it was their idea for Sandvik to create it in the first place. So going from an old Rogue to a very new Livewire that just came out within the last month or so, just came in today to me from House of Blades, I'm extremely impressed. I don't want to say I'm impressed with the progress because they've always been making great stuff. Kershaw is not the name Kershaw for no reason. I hate to say that Kershaw is so much more common today for its Chinese import models that still, some of them still use 1428. D2 has become more popular, for sure. The D2 tool steel that you find in some contemporary Kershaws. But I'm extremely happy to see them step up to the premium steel on their out the front. So that's the old Rogue and the new Livewire. Let's take a look at some zero tolerance fixed blades. This is one of ZT's original fixed blade models. This is the 0170, which is an absolute delight to hold in your hand. This is a phenomenal fixed blade knife, which is, I mean, all you have to do is look at the style and you can tell this is not only for military use, but this is a combat knife all day long. What's very interesting to me about this is that this knife too, even though it's fairly thick, I think it's 3/16 of an inch thick on the spine, and it is obviously full tang. What's very interesting to me is that this knife too used 1428 steel. And why I find that so interesting is because the much more recent version, which just recently came out, the 0006, has upgraded to 3V steel. In fact, let's see if we can get you zoomed in here. There you go, CPM 3V, okay? And what stands out to me is that 3V is an extremely hard tool steel, far, far harder and much better at enduring hard use and abuse than even D2 by a lot. Certainly far superior for hard use than 14C28N. And I'm not sure if this knife really was meant for hard use or if it was meant just for penetrating flesh. I'm not sure what the intention was with a knife this size with a thick full tang spine made out of 14C28N. But I can tell you what the intention is with this one, with 3V. Obviously, zero tolerance doesn't mess around. They never have, from start to finish. They always have been the Lexus to Kershaw's Toyota, the Cadillac to Kershaw's Chevy. And they always have been the higher end quality material, beefy, built like a tank models to Kershaw's more generic EDC models. This fixed blade with 3V certainly is meant for as hard of use as you can throw at it. This is meant to cut and chop and be pounded into wood, and I mean, you will probably not run into a situation where you break this knife. Now, what's interesting about 3V is that it is not a stainless steel, so it's not corrosion resistant. But in this case, ZT has coated the blade, so that should help with some corrosion resistance. There's a phenomenal lot of jimping up here on top. I'm going to say if you have a small finger, this might be a finger choil that you might use to choke up and take advantage of that jimping. My finger certainly considers this a sharpening choil, because if I try to get my finger choked up in there, I'm going to just slice right through this side of my finger. So my finger's staying right back here behind the guard, no doubt about it. Full tang with a very solid strike plate here. This is really an impressive knife. What's interesting to me also is that in doing a little bit of research on these two models, this is a 6-inch blade. This one, I read one place this was a 5.5-inch blade. 5.5-inch? Well, all you have to do is compare these two here, and I'll tell you right now that if this is 5.5, then this is not 6. And if this is 6, then this is not 5.5. Stand by one. Let's figure out exactly what the size is on these two knives. On the 0006, we've got a usable blade length of, just coming in right at about 5.5 inches of usable sharpened blade length. On the 0170, we've got a usable sharpened blade length of just over 6 inches, about 6.25 inches. So there we go. We've answered our own questions. So again, going from 14C28N steel to the contemporary 3V is very interesting again, because you see that historically Kershaw, particularly in this case Kai owning ZT, was so set on using their 14C28N. They used it for so many things, even in zero tolerance, even in higher end knives, even in knives that sure look like they were built to be impact resistant. But now you can see they've really stepped up to a steel that is made for abuse and torture and hard use. So what do you guys think? You like 1428 steel? A lot of people love it. A lot of people swear up and down by 1428 because of its ability to hold an edge and because of its corrosion resistance. It's interesting to me that this is a blade that's DLC, diamond-like, it's a corrosion resistant coating, and 14C28 is already a very corrosion resistant steel. But here it is coated. I'm wondering if maybe that was more for looks than for corrosion resistance. Again, 3V is not even stainless, so this is not going to be corrosion resistant, but it is coated, so that should help. What do you guys think? Which one of these do you like better? You like this very stylized 0170, or you like this, as certainly this is a more modern take on another old ZT fixed blade, one that I don't own and have never had, but I know I've seen it before. This is a very much more traditional style of fixed blade. Looks like it could be a bayonet if it had a barrel attachment point up on the top. What do you guys think? Which one of these do you like better? And what do you think about the Rogue out the side, RJ Martin design, and the much more contemporary 20CV Diskin designed Livewire? Hit me up with your comments and your thoughts below the video. Make sure you subscribe. Send this video, please, to any of your dear friends who are Kershaw and ZT fanatics, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at CivOps_gear. Thanks very much, guys. See you on the next episode. Bye-bye.